We are not at the studio.
We're at Gamescom.
Let's talk about it.
So yes, we are here at Gamescom. We're obviously still working, seeing games, interviewing folks. This week's episode is going to be a little bit more haphazard, hence why I've got my phone with the notes for this episode on. But basically, we wanted to talk about Diablo and the realities of running a live service game, especially one that has been on a bit of a journey since it launched.
Ups and downs.
Big ups, big downs.
Yeah.
Let's just say launched pretty much
Acclaimed, yeah.
Acclaimed, great scores across the board. People liked it at the beginning, and then folks found issues with it. Season 1 will be the point where a lot of issues. The tide turned. The community was not happy. Blizzard has now announced Season 2. They're talking about sweeping changes, things that the community has wanted, as well as a bunch of new content. And so it's been a very interesting journey for this game that only came out a few months ago. We had this interview with Blizzard lined up, and we could ask them about every minute change that's coming to Season 2. But we genuinely thought it'd be more interesting to ask them about the realities of running a live service game and how important player feedback is, press feedback is, but also the realities of implementing it, because it is not as easy as just tweak a line of code. This episode.
There's a lot of expectation around what Blizzard should deliver, how quickly it could deliver it. And often that expectation is built on a lack of understanding or a lack of awareness of what goes into it to a degree. And we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Everyone's guilty of it. I wish they would put more stuff out quicker, but it's an opportunity to kind of talk to them about that and present, this is what the community wants. How realistic is it? What can you do? That kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And as well, this is not a mouthpiece for Blizzard to say stuff. It's just genuinely, we were talking to them and we're like, that's an interesting thing that we can ask about. So up top, we asked, when you have launched a live service game into the world, what data do you look at when you're thinking about making changes?
Yeah, and unsurprisingly, it's a lot of different things.
So with live service development, we're always paying attention to the community. So we're looking at all sources of feedback. We solicit surveys to some of our players. So we use that as one kind of funnel for information. We look at telemetry and data that's like coming back from the back end. So we kind of see where there are pain points or friction from just looking at data. But then also we're paying attention to forums. When we do a blog post or release patch notes, we're trying to look at what is the response, where things are coming back from the community. And we use that to kind of help inform some of the decision points for the future. And so what's great with the live service is between seasons, patches, hot fixes, there's numerous kind of vehicles for us to kind of inject change and evolve the game for the future. And it's always in pursuit of making the best possible experience for the players.
One of the big challenges is really around the idea of the vocal minority. Sometimes a very small group can be very loud, and that's why we use things like surveys. Because you're always managing sort of the qualitative information you get, where people's just opinions, and then the quantitative information you have, which the actual data that shows what's actually happening. And it's in a game where it's sort of built on a power fantasy. Everybody loves candy, right? And so but you can't have candy all the time. And so that's one of the hard parts about managing, is that sometimes there's a little bit of medicine and you use some sugar to go with it, right? And I think one of the things as we look at Season 1, we want to really show that we're being responsive and reactive and being agile, but we sort of got 2/3 of the way there, and we had a lot of the medicine, but we didn't have the sugar yet. And so, but to be able to act quickly, we sort of said, well, that's good. We've got the fix, but when we didn't bring and here's the other fun part that makes that balance work. And so I think that's part of the criticism of Season 1, is that we did the medicine, didn't quite yet do the sugar, and then we've been doing the sugar as we go now. And there's something our game director talked about in one of the live streams, is that moving forward, anytime we have to do any sort of significant balance, we'll always have that other side of it, because it's really about, we're making the game for player joy. We're making the game the best game we can for players. And so, but sometimes they have to have a salad. They can't have ice cream for dinner every night, and so you just have to kind of balance your messaging, manage expectations, communicate more openly. And I think we're doing that now as we go into Season 2.
So they explain what the data points that they use are, but at the same time, they kind of have to match that with what the community needs and wants to try and create a achievable kind of pipeline for them and an achievable timeline for them, so that they can actually address some of what they need to now and keep the kind of community happy, but also make sure that they're laying the foundation and the groundwork for the future, right?
Yeah.
And so we asked them, what's that like? And they were very candid about it.
We have essentially 3 teams working on the seasonal side. We have our odd teams, so like doing season 1, then season 3, and then season 5. We have our even teams doing season 2, season 4, and then we have another team that's focused on what's going on in the live game. And so on top of those 3 teams, we're like the odds and evens are leapfrogging each other. We've got our live team, and then we actually have an expansion team working as well. And so when we hear a piece of feedback, there's always a conversation. If we agree with it, then it's like, is this a short term? Hey, we can do that as a hot fix overnight. Is this more of a patch that has to come in 2 weeks? Or actually it's something we're going to address next season because of the way that, we're a lot of the ways, that's part of the thing. Like when we put out season 1 was finished when we released. And so there was no real player feedback yet, other than sort of the beta feedback. But after launch, like season 1 was kind of done. And so that's why we use that preseason time to tweak as much as we could, and why we, removed the need for the altars of Lilith and that kind of thing. So it's just that notion that like the trains are always running, right? The trains are always leaving the station, and what can get on which train is always part of the balancing act of like, oh yeah, we agree with that feedback. Now which train can we actually make it on? And are we willing to delay other things to make that happen? Because I think sometimes people just feel like it's always additive, and really it's kind of like there's only so much scope that a team can do. And so to say like, oh, this new idea wants to come in, well then that means usually another idea needs to get postponed. And so when we're talking about the prioritization, it's like, oh, we want to do this. Are we willing to slow down this other thing? And so that's definitely one of the things, the give and takes you have to do when you're balancing.
So they have their pipeline,
Yep.
and they have all the data, and they know what they want to change, but there's also a risk in changing that is inherent to all video games. Like the moment you change one small thing, it has a knock-on effect. So we asked them, what is the approach when you have such a risky situation like that, where removing or changing one block could have a massive knock-on impact?
I have something you need to change. Change it right now.
Please.
Here's why you can't necessarily do that.
I think at the end of the day, like any change that we make, there's a process involved, right? We need to make sure that it's tested thoroughly, that we're not going to be adding something into our live service that's something that's going to fundamentally break, the experience for players. And so it takes time to, do things right, to make sure it's thought through. And so there's a time element there that may not always be apparent, but we need to make sure we go through the appropriate paces when doing something new. But over time, it is going to be an evolution. I think there's going to be a lot of great things that players can expect. We do have like a long-range plan of where we want to take things. And then obviously we want to be flexible along the way though. So as we get more information, more data comes through, we want to be able to like make pivots as necessary. So we're, again, ultimately delivering the best possible experience for players. That's really what it's all about.
I think the big thing from when we were talking to Rod and Chris that I didn't necessarily realize was that season 1 was finished before the game launched. And so they didn't have any data to pull from. So now going into season 2, they do.
And I think the subtext of the answer that you're about to see is we're going to continue to get more data points.
Yep.
I think like from our side, the expectation as players is it will get better, but from their side, they're like, we're going to have more information to work with, and the next step will be even better. So that's the hope on their side. And I think the kind of like quid pro quo or the back and forth with them is for players like us who want that stuff quickly, have to kind of think about the rollout of that stuff as being more reasonable, because it takes time and all the things that Rod's talked about before. But this is what he said in his own words.
I think that's what we're learning now. Like, that's one of the things is like, we're having lots of conversation about the first time we've done something, and so in times we'll come together and we'll go like, hey, everybody, this is one data point, and we're looking at season 1 and like, what's the battle pass doing? What's the shop doing? What is the seasonal reset doing? How do we feel about it? It's like, at the end of the day, it's one data point. And so I'm really excited for season 2 on October 17th, because we'll have 2 data points to go like, okay, how many people are playing? How many people are engaging with battle pass and shop? How's it all working? And so I think this is all learning for us. Like, I know people tend to think like, oh, you had 10 years with Diablo 3, you must know everything. And the answer is very different games, very different team. And so and obviously the industry has changed in the last 10 years. So for us, this is a lot of learning for us. So we're going to, make some mistakes as we're trying to make the game better and better.
Games industry has changed a lot. Social media changes a lot. YouTube changes a lot. Forums change a lot.
But you know what doesn't? War. War never changes.
It's an interesting conversation, especially one where a lot of publishers are wanting to make live service games. It's kind of interesting to get a little peek behind the curtain to see all the decisions that go into that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Blizzard, Rod, Chris, whoever can say all this stuff. The proof is going to be in the pudding, but at least now we've seen how the pudding is made.
It takes a really long time to make the full pudding.
Yeah.
But you can prep the ingredients beforehand.
Yeah.
But it goes in the oven and it slow cooks for a really long time.
350
and
for
350 for maybe 2 to 3 years.
This is it. If you've seen this show before, you know that we love very strange
belabored metaphors. Yeah, I think ultimately it is a case of like, they have to prove it. And I think from our perspective as players, I think the thing that I walked away thinking was like, I get it. It makes a lot of sense, but I still need meaningful changes, at least, once per season, even more. Because if it's a case of like, we're not going to do anything, this is going to be broken until the next time, I don't think that's a good middle ground.
No, people are going to drop off and they're not going to get back on.
Yeah, it hurts the health of the game to kind of approach it that way. But I think for me now, I'm going to be a little more like, okay, I'm keeping an eye on you. I think season 2 is a good example of what it could be, where it's like, oh, we figured out you need this right now. But I came away thinking, I wish there was more UI changes or kind of like more options in terms of like how you manage items and inventory stuff and that kind of stuff, which isn't there. But maybe that'll be in the next one.
So thank you for this. Thank you for this.
Thank you for this episode of Spot On. I appreciate the effort and time you put into it.
Thank you for watching this slightly chaotic episode of Spot On. Seriously, we fall apart without a studio. But no, seriously, it was honestly just nice to chat to a developer and get their insight on the things.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do some more in the future. Who knows? Tell us if you like it.
You can find me on Twitter at LisaJamesGames.
And you can find me on X at TimorH.
We'll see you next week.
I hated that. Every part of that.
Said it,
I hated it.
Twitter.com, mate.
I'm going home. I'm walking it to the US.